Guys, welcome to another video tutorial with Build with Mr. Lee. In today's video tutorial, we're going to be continuing with the part 2 of our previous video for our CRUD operation. In this case, we are trying to create our blog categories. So we are creating categories for our blog, and we also want to update, want to delete, and also we want to retrieve those categories once we've created them and store them in our database. So we've been able to add a form. If you go to your website, the form is there. If you click on this, you're going to see the form. So like every table has a column and a row, so for our categories table, we have name as a column and status as also a column. So we've been able to create that. The next thing we're looking at was the action of our form. So you go to your web.php. So your web.php, you see the form action, which we have called store. So it's a post method, so we've called it store. So inside our admin category controller, we're going to create a new method here, which is a public method, a public function called store. And once we create store, the store method, you can actually leave it blank because um we can actually add something, a request class here, because we're expecting a request from our form. So we can leave it this way. The next thing to do once you actually have this is to create a model and create a migration file. Possibly you're hearing about a model in for the first time. What is a model? Model is more like a blueprint. So, for example, if you want to build a house, you actually have a blueprint for you to use to build the house. The blueprint is going to give you, okay, the door is supposed to be here, the window is supposed to be. It's the same thing with a model. So, model actually work with migration. What are migrations? Migrations are more like our tables, category tables. So, our model would handle things like relationship, defining the fillable fields. You get to understand this when we make use of it, but this is how to create a model. So to create a model, you type php on your terminal, you type php artisan make colon model. Let me clear this in so it will be php artisan make colon model. Then the name of the model, now is a category model. Then now in this model, we want to actually make a migration out of it. That means we want to create a table out of it. So for you to create a migration, when you're using the model command, you use a flag called M. So flag M, that is -M. So let's run this command again. So you can actually see that, let me increase this. Your model file was created in the app models category.php. You can actually see that in app models. Let's click in models. You're going to see category.php. This is a model. Then the second file that was created is the migration file, which is our table, create categories table, which is inside our database migration. So in your database migration, you're going to see categories table. So the next thing actually to add on our categories table is the columns. So the first column we have here is the name, the second column is status. So by default, actually, Laravel introduces two columns or three columns. The first one is the ID. That is the unique primary key that is used to identify each of the categories. Then the second and third here is the timestamps, which is for created at the date it was created at, and possibly if you did an update to the category, that's where the updated at comes to play. So we are going to be adding the name. The name is going to be a string, and the name is going to be unique. It's going to have a unique attribute. Then the second thing we are going to add here is Status active. Let's still leave it as a string. Status. And we are going to be adding a method here called default. So by default, our status is always active, except otherwise stated by the admin. So with this being said and with this being done, we can now come back to our store method. After every listen, we need to like validate our request first of all. So we validate request validate, and you do this from our form. Ensure that what you're actually sending from the form is what you're validating. So from our form, we have this thing called category name. So you copy this. So you are doing like an associative array, category name, and we give it required. It's a string. Let's give it a maximum character of 255. So the next this thing we have here is status. So status can actually be nullable, but because there's a default value for it. But let's still just make it required, and it's a string also. So that's basically the two validation we need. Now the next thing is how we need to add it to database. Now in adding to database, there are two methods I'm going to show you. Method one is the using the model. Look at the model, and you use a create method. This create method um uses accept an array parameter. So in your array, that's where you store the name, and in our case, not description. In our case, we are using status. So the second one is we use the new keyword to create a class. Then after creating the class, we can now store the values we want. That's the name and the status to the class. Then we now save it to the database. So I actually prefer the create method because the create method is shorter than this creating a class using the new keyword. We're actually going to use create method. Let me just copy from here and use that here. So one other thing here is since we're actually using a model here, we would need to import our model. So you hold down control space, ensure you have IntelliFence installed on your extension installed on your VS Code. So if you look by the right hand side, you're going to see use app models category. You click enter, you see it comes at the top here, use app model category. So we're actually using the model to create this particular category. So once this category has been created, we actually can redirect with a response. Let's say let's do a return back with success, category created successfully. So with this, we've been able to store our category in our database inside this table. Then one other thing about the model is once you have a model and you want to actually store some things inside the table inside the model, you must actually add it as a fillable. Now, fillable is a protected property. So, protected fillable, and in our fillable, we have an array of strings, name and status, which are the fields you want to actually add to the database. From our blogs, our categories table, you see name and status. If there are other fields here, you would need to add them to your fillable property, but we just have name and status. There's no need to add the ID and the timestamps because Laravel is handling it. So with these two properties added, then we can actually populate our database with this with categories like different rows. So after this has been done, we would need to migrate. So to migrate our newly created category table, we run php artist and migrate. So it's going to run migration. Categories system has been migrated. So if you check your database on your local host, you're going to see that the categories table has been migrated, and for the time being it is empty. It has the name, status, created at, updated at, and ID as supposed. So now let's refresh this page and let's try adding a category. So if you put the name of the category to be education and it's active by default, if you click on save changes, all things being equal, it is supposed to work. Okay, column name cannot be null, insert into categories, name, status, updated at. So let's look at what we did here inside the category controller. So request name, request status. Okay, so the issue was coming from the fact that in our front end we have category name, and when we are accessing in our category controller, we just did request name. So we'll have to change this to category underscore name for it to work properly. Let's see. So you can actually confirm if anything has been added to the database. So we've been able to create our um first ever category. So we've been able to create our first ever category. On the next video, I'm actually going to show you how to retrieve those categories and show them on this particular page. Thank you for staying to this time. See you in my next video. Do well to like, share, subscribe, and comment. See you in my next video.